Welcome back to Moby Dick, Chapter 31, Queen Mab. In this chapter, Stubb describes to Flask a dream that he has after Ahab kicks him, or doesn't kick him actually, threatens to kick him but doesn't kick him, and Ahab, stays up on top of the deck to walk around all night, and then he throws his pipe overboard, and there's this corollary to him being Hamlet or Hamlet's father's ghost. That's where Ahab is. This is the next morning. Stubb comes up to Flask, tells him about a dream that he's had. After this chapter, just in case we thought we were moving forward in the action, Ishmael is going to step back again and spend quite a bit of time talking about cetology, or the different kinds of whales and the different things that are going on with the whales, and he's going to get a lot of that information wrong. But before we deal with yet another one of his distractions and feints away from the story that he's trying to tell us, we get Queen Mab. Queen Mab in literary legend, most specifically in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, but she shows up in other places too. There's a poem by Shelley and others. Queen Mab is a fairy queen who shows up while people are sleeping, preferably these people are young virginal girls, and gives them dreams. What's implied is that they're rather racy and exciting dreams that these girls aren't supposed to know anything about yet. If the girls are naughty, they can wake up with canker sores or, evidence of things like syphilis or something like that. Otherwise, they can be considered hallucinatory, as Mercutio describes to Romeo. Anyway, Queen Mab brings strange dreams. Now, being a good romantic author, Melville's going to know not only who Queen Mab is, but that she brings sex dreams, not just any old dream. Being a good romantic era reader, any good reader will know that in literature, sex is always equal to death. And if death is a little sleep in which one might dream, you can see the cycle here, right? I'm not sure that Ishmael really knows what he's working with, but we've got this: if you sleep, you're dead, and if you have sex, you're dead. And if you dream, you're asleep, but you might also be having really exciting, weird dreams about things that are real but not real. It's kind of confusing, right? Let's just leave that aside. I'm not sure that Ishmael knows what he's dealing with, and I don't know what he's dealing with either. But it wouldn't have been put in here for no reason at all. Getting away from the nice topic of sex and death, let's talk about what Stubb says to Flask. Stubbs tells Flask that he dreamt that Ahab kicked him. And he was kicked by Ahab with Ahab's ivory leg. And Stubb tried to kick back. But when Stubb kicked Ahab, his leg fell off, making him a one-legged man like Ahab. And then, Stubb keeps kicking Ahab, but Ahab turns into a pyramid. And Stubb thinks that's really weird, but I'm going to keep kicking him. But as Stubb is now kicking this pyramid, it occurs to him that it wasn't that much of an insult being kicked from Ahab. I mean, what's the real problem? It wasn't like he kicked me with his real leg. It was just a fake leg. And then the line is, and there's a mighty difference between a living thump and a dead thump. And I think that we're meant to think here of the universal thump, which gets passed around and treats us all the same. Stubb goes back to say, that's what makes a blow from the hand, Flask, 50 times more savage to bear than a blow from a cane. The living member, that makes the living insult, my little man. In the first chapter, when Ishmael describes the universal thump that goes round, and we all get treated pretty much the same, as he puts it, ain't we all a slave? Or who's not a slave? Stubb is still trying to distinguish between what is alive and what isn't. I think that with Mab, and with nighttime, and with the sea, I think that what we're seeing is that Ishmael isn't sure what is alive and what isn't. We already know that he's not sure what's real, and he's not sure what's true. I think he's not sure what being alive or being fake is. Stubb clearly allies himself with the daylight and with being awake, and with flesh and living bone being alive, and anything else that isn't that is either dark or asleep or dead or a non-entity. For Stubb, it's very clear. Ahab is still a creature of this night, and he is both alive with one leg and dead with one fake leg. Perhaps Ahab himself is Queen Mab. Well, there you go. Ahab is Mab. Only rather than bringing dreams that are exciting and thrilling and can both kill you and bring you to life, Ahab brings exciting and thrilling and murderous and wild. There is a passion to the sea, and there is a life to the sea. That is Ahab. Now, is he the stuff of dreams or the stuff of nightmares? We talked earlier about Ahab being the dream or the embodiment of the ideal that Ishmael thinks that he wants to be, but now confronted with the reality of it, we're not so sure that that's really what he wants. Moving on to Stubb's dream. Stubb tells himself, well, his leg is, it's just a whalebone cane, and it was just a little knock that he gave me, and, what is that? He didn't kick me with his foot. That would have been an insult. But this is just, it's a tap. He goes on and he says, but while I was battering away at the pyramid, a sort of badger-haired old merman with a hump on his back takes me by the shoulders and slews me round. Ishmael can bring up a merman, the author can use a merman here as another kind of Ahab. Ahab is very much man missing parts. A merman is, of course, a creature of the sea. In fact, with his humpback, he is meant to be more like the whale and less like the man. But there is still some kind of humanity to him. The humpback, Mr. Humpback, the merman, explains to Stubb that not only does Stubb need to stop kicking Ahab, but he needs to better understand what the kick from Ahab is. The kick from Ahab is an honor. It is a blessing. It is an attempt by Ahab, something that is both alive and not alive, something that is a bridge between those worlds. It is a gift of information. Now, I don't know if we agree with this or not. Maybe we just think that Stubb is hallucinating, and maybe Ishmael has actually made up this dream to try to describe this so that if we think he's crazy, he can just say that it's a dream and it wasn't even his dream. Because how would Ishmael do this? Does Ishmael not sleep at all? Anyway, the merman says, listen, wise Stubb. In old England, the greatest lords think it great glory to be slapped by a queen and made garter knights of. But be your boast, Stubb, that ye were kicked by old Ahab and made a wise man of. Remember what I say, be kicked by him, account his kicks honors, and on no account kick back, for you can't help yourself, wise Stubb. Don't you see that pyramid? With that, he all of a sudden seemed somehow, in some queer fashion, to swim off into the air. I snored, rolled over, and there I was in my hammock. Now what do you think of that dream, Flask? And Flask says, I don't know, it seems sort of foolish to me, though. As in, you're completely crazy and off your rocker. Which I admit my amateur dream analysis here is probably a little bit bizarre as well. Stubb says, maybe, but it's made a wise man of me, Flask. Now, here's another difference. Ishmael takes Stub takes this wisdom to mean don't talk to Ahab, don't argue with him, leave him alone and just do what he says. I don't think that's what Ishmael thinks. I think very much that Ishmael is trying to explain this nether region where we can find what is alive and yet dead, or what is awake and yet asleep. At this point, Ahab yells out, "Look sharp, all of ye, there are whales hereabouts. If ye see a white one, split your lungs for him." So now we're on the hunt. Ahab declares that we are now looking for a white whale. And Stubb says, "A white whale? Did ye mark that, man? Look ye, there's something special in the wind. Stand by for it, Flask. Ahab has that's bloody on his mind." Ahab's on the hunt for a white whale, and we're going to go with him. Often dreams in literature, and many believe in real life, are used to impart a kind of wisdom that our logical, rational, daylight minds aren't willing to understand. It allows for ambiguity. It allows for apparent contradiction to coexist. That's what Queen Mab is. We are very much in a dream or a nightmare. We are very much in a hunt for something that is bigger. And that's why in the next chapter, Ishmael backs off and starts talking about different kinds of whales, because it's safer to talk about information.